April 28, 1945, East China Sea. 20 miles southeast of a Japanese convoy, Lieutenant Commander James Patterson guided his PB-4Y-2 privateer bomber at 15,000 feet. Inside the dark cabin, his radar operator called out 4 distant blips. Japanese vessels, ships the crew would never actually see with their own eyes. Hanging silently in the bomb bay were 2 ASM-N-2 BAT missiles, weapons so far ahead of their time that Japanese sailors had no concept of what was about to strike them. Target bearing 045, range 18 miles. The operator said. That was all. Just glowing dots on a radar screen. Patterson's hand moved, and in seconds, the missiles dropped into the night sky. Unlike bombs of old, these weapons didn't need pilots to guide them. Each bat carried its own miniature radar brain. Once released, it would hunt the enemy itself, adjusting course through servo motors and analog circuits, until it smashed into steel and fire. By the time the Japanese even realized they were under attack, the American crew would already be flying home. This wasn't courage. This wasn't dogfighting skill. This was warfare transformed by machines, the world's first true fire-and-forget smart weapon. The birth of automated warfare. The ASM-N-2 BAT was the first fully automated guided missile ever used in combat. Developed by the National Bureau of Standards under physicist Dr. Hugh Dryden, who would later help lead NASA, it was a marvel of 1940 science. Weight 1,880 pounds. Wingspan 10 feet. Warhead 1,000 pound and M65 high explosive. Radar seeker range 20 miles in clear skies. Its guidance system relied on analog computers, vacuum tubes, and gyroscopes, crude by today's standards, but revolutionary in 1945. Unlike German glide bombs, which required human operators steering them by radio, the BAT was fully autonomous. Once dropped, the weapon thought for itself. The project began in 1942, as America sought weapons that could strike beyond Japanese anti-aircraft fire. Engineers from Bell Labs, universities, and Navy research stations combined their expertise. By 1943, prototypes were flying from Patuxent River, Maryland. Most importantly, America could mass-produce it. Where Germany built a handful of guided bombs by hand, the U.S. manufactured 3,000 BAT missiles, a feat only possible because of standardized assembly line production. First combat missions. The BAT's debut came on April 23, 1945, when Squadron VPB-109 launched 2 missiles at Balikpapan Harbor, Borneo. Both failed, a reminder that new technology rarely works perfectly the first time. But just 5 days later, on April 28, history changed. A BAT missile locked onto a Japanese patrol vessel and destroyed it from 9 miles away. For the sailors below, death came without warning. No aircraft overhead, no bomb diving from the clouds, no chance to fight back. Just an explosion from an invisible machine. Over the following weeks, May 1, 1945, another small vessel destroyed off Borneo. May 28, 1945, a direct strike on the escort warship Kaiboka Naguni near Okinawa, crippling it beyond repair. June 18, 1945, 1 more patrol vessel sunk. In total, BAT missiles sank only 3 ships and damaged a 4th. Modest results, yet the psychological shock was immense. Technology versus tradition. To grasp the significance, consider the gap between America and Japan in 1945. Japan began the war with the world's best torpedoes, the Type 93 Long Lance, and superb night fighting tactics. But while Japan perfected existing tools, America invented entirely new categories of weapons. Japanese engineers who captured American radar sets could recognize individual parts, vacuum tubes, transformers, but they couldn't understand how those parts worked together as integrated systems. Their industry was still artisanal, relying on hand-fitted components. Meanwhile, America's factories rolled out interchangeable parts by the thousands. This wasn't just technology. It was a clash of industrial philosophies. Japan leaned on warrior spirit and craftsmanship. America leaned on mass production and science. The BAT embodied this divide perfectly. Fear in the Pacific. For Japanese sailors, the BAT missile was terrifying. Their training prepared them for visible battles, warships against warships, planes diving from the sky. But how do you fight a weapon you cannot see? How do you counter a bomb that thinks? Reports from survivors describe confusion, helplessness, and fear. Death was expected in battle, but death from an invisible machine felt unnatural, dishonorable, beyond comprehension. Here, the contrast of the Pacific War becomes sharp. America removed the pilot from danger with autonomous weapons. Japan turned its pilots into human weapons, the kamikaze. One side trusted machines, the other trusted sacrifice. Legacy of the BAT. In raw numbers, the BAT was not a decisive weapon. Only a handful of kills. Many failures due to humidity, radar confusion, or primitive electronics. Yet its impact went far beyond tonnage sunk. Japanese captains hesitated to sail, fearing a weapon they could not stop. U.S. intelligence deliberately spread rumors about thinking bombs to magnify fear. Most importantly, the BAT proved that war could be automated. It was the ancestor of every modern smart bomb, cruise missile, and drone strike. In the final months of World War II, while Japan bet its future on kamikaze sacrifice, America unveiled the opposite vision. Machines that fought without human courage at all. A primitive, imperfect beginning, but also the dawn of the age of automated warfare. The BAT missile was a marvel of 1940s science, and a reminder of its limits. Its guidance relied on fragile vacuum tubes, delicate servos that demanded perfect calibration, and a radar system easily confused by weather or coastlines. Success required rare conditions: clear skies, open seas, and isolated targets. That's why, of roughly 100 missiles fired in combat, only a handful struck home. The BAT worked best against slow-moving ships in open waters. In crowded harbors or stormy skies, it often failed. Yet even this modest record proved the concept, and changed warfare forever. A weapon ahead of its time. The last BAT mission came on August 13, 1945, just 2 days before Japan's surrender. Squadron VPB-109 launched 2 missiles. Both missed. It was a fitting end. A weapon that promised more than it delivered, but pointed toward a future that could not be ignored. By war's end, about 420 BAT missiles had been deployed to the Pacific, with 100 fired in combat. Only 3 ships were sunk and 1 damaged. The rest were shipped home, tested until 1948, and quietly retired in the early 1950s. On paper, the BAT was a failure, but in reality, it was a proof of concept that shaped every guided weapon to come. Seeds of the future. The engineers behind the BAT carried its lessons into the Cold War. Dr. William McLean, who had worked on its guidance system, later developed the AIM-9 Sidewinder, the most successful air-to-air missile in history. Its concepts, fire-and-forget targeting, autonomous guidance, radar seeking, became the foundation for modern weapons like the Tomahawk cruise missile and the Harpoon anti-ship missile. Every improvement, better radar discrimination, hardened electronics, more reliable control systems, came from problems first exposed by the BAT. Significance versus statistics. Critics argue the BAT wasn't worth its $12 million cost. Conventional bombers and torpedo planes sank far more ships at far less expense. On a tactical level, they're right. But this narrow view misses the larger truth. The BAT proved automated killing was possible. It was less a weapon than a demonstrator, a bridge from human-guided warfare to machine-driven combat. Where Japan bet on human sacrifice through kamikazes, America invested in replacing human risk with machines. One approach looked backward. The other looked forward. Confusion and fear. Japanese records from 1945 reveal how alien the weapon seemed. Some officers believed they were under attack by guided torpedoes. Others thought they faced robotic aircraft. A few even imagined death rays. They had no framework to understand what was happening. Without captured examples or knowledge of radar electronics, countermeasures were impossible. Desperate proposals ranged from smoke screens to suicide swimmers. None were implemented before the war ended. For the sailors on the receiving end, the terror was unlike anything they had known. To die in open battle was honorable, but to be killed by a machine that hunted on its own, unseen, unheard, felt inhuman. They were the first warriors in history to face truly automated weapons. Legacy of the BAT. In numbers, the BAT barely mattered. 3,000 produced, 420 deployed. 100 fired. 3 ships sunk, 1 damaged. But in history, its impact was enormous. It proved that precision, not mass, would define future wars. That automation could replace courage. That machines could take human decision-making out of the killing equation. The BAT's DNA runs through every smart bomb, cruise missile, and armed drone in use today. And with it came new ethical dilemmas. If machines make lethal decisions, who carries responsibility? What happens when killing becomes mathematical, not personal? Can warrior honor survive in a world where the bravest fighter is helpless before invisible weapons? These questions, raised by a 1,880-pound glide bomb in 1945, remain unresolved. The first casualties of the machine age. For the Japanese sailors who died without ever seeing their attacker, the BAT was incomprehensible. Their confusion and helplessness marked humanity's entry into a new era. One where wars would be fought not only by soldiers, but by algorithms. The BAT missile didn't win World War II. That victory came from overwhelming industry, submarine warfare, and ultimately atomic fire. But the BAT showed the future. Precision over mass, automation over courage, technology over spirit. It carried more than 1,000 pounds of explosives. It carried the end of one age of warfare and the beginning of another. An age we are still living in. An age we are still struggling to control. The BAT missile may be the most important weapon of World War II that almost nobody remembers.